What's up, Poultry fam? You guys know what the scenario is, so recap time. When we last left off, Izuku and Katsuki entered the entrance exams where they both passed with flying colors and only a tiny hiccup concerning the 0-point robot. During their first day at UA, Eraserhead gave his apprehension test, where Deku actually came in first place and Mineta came in last and didn't show much potential, causing him to be dropped from the program. At the end of that part, I introduced the idea of Shinso and Kendo joining Class 1A and Class 1B respectively, where pretty heavily you guys voted towards them yes joining. Also, I will say that we will see Mineta again, probably not the way most of you guys are expecting, but he is not going and out of the story for good. We return to this story now. The first day of class finishes off as it did in canon, though something interesting to happen here would be Deku's budding friendship with Tenya Ida and Ochaka Uraraka coming into play with his whatever it is with Bakugo. In this scenario, I could definitely see Deku approaching Bakugo after school to ask him what he thought of their first day, and that would bring his two new friends into close contact with his one older one. Ochako probably still views Bakugo as mean and scary, with Ida still thinking he's a bit too gruff and kind of a punk for his taste, but if Deku gets along with him, he can't be all bad in their minds. So, what would be a trio in the original timeline kind of becomes a trio that forces a fourth person to hang out and spend time with them, even though he openly dislikes them and doesn't want to be around them. Before he can leave the school, Aizawa actually approaches Deku. He doesn't express it, but his on-the-spot creation of his new build, the Snipe Cannon, showed a lot of promise and potential. Eraserhead would probably feel very irrational about not building upon that potential, pun intended. The problem with that is that none of the teachers in Midoriya's current hero courses will be able to truly focus on the versatility his quirk actually has. Yaoyorozu has a very similar situation, but under a different circumstance where he didn't have two students with a similar versatility and their abilities, he likely wouldn't act on something like this and inconvenience one of his peers. For now, he'd like to at least introduce Midoriya to Power Loader and see if the support course teacher had any tips for his student. The two arrive to the support class workshop and the room pretty much explodes as soon as they arrive there. We then get the introduction of Power Loader as he scolds his own student whose latest invention had been the cause of said explosion. The pro apologizes to Eraserhead and introduces his student, Mei Hatsume. In turn, as irrational as it is, Eraser lets it slide and introduces the nervous and shocked Midoriya for explaining why he wants the two to meet, and directing Midoriya to give a more in-depth explanation of his quirk and how he uses it. Still a little bit nervous and put off by this situation, Izuku explains how his quirk nanites works and demonstrates it by creating a very small single smash hand. This impresses and intrigues Power Loader, and it makes Mei so excited and surprised that she begins asking Deku questions at a few trillion miles a minute and studying the smash hand created by getting a little too close for Deku's comfort. Power Loader calms her down and examines Deku's quirk and explains that he is very busy, but if Midoriya wants, he can definitely come and see Power Loader when he didn't have class to receive advice when he wants to or when he has free time. And Hatsume is very excited to work with him and see how he can help her improve her own babies. Mulling it over for only a little bit, Midoriya is happy to accept this offer as it'll help him grow more knowledgeable about engineering and it'll make him stronger overall. Even though Hatsume seems a bit too forward for his taste, remember he's maintained a friendship with Bakugo before even arriving to UA, so he's somewhat used to eccentric and passionate people. For now, he and Eraserhead conclude their visit, and Deku leaves for the day to go home. That said, Eraserhead does warn Deku not to overwhelm Power Loader by always coming to him when he had a problem. Learn from him and suck up the knowledge he was willing to give, but also be willing to be your own hero and come up with your own ideas, because your teachers won't always be there when you're an actual pro hero. With that, Midoriya is sent home, and Aizawa decides that he will indeed introduce Momo Yaoyorozu to Power Loader. The very next day, as in canon, the students have normal everyday high school classes in the morning and eat their lunch later in the day. That morning though, Isuka Kendo is introduced to her new class, and Eraserhead explains that with Mineta gone to fill out the class, they have brought in Isuka from class 1B and a student from another class had taken her place in 1B. Later in the day, afternoon classes kick off and All Might arrives still wanting to do some battle training. The students are told to suit up by All Might, and now we have the issue of Deku's costume in this timeline. Now, right off the bat, Deku's costume will look like his canon version for the sake of visuals. This is just for simplicity's sake, even though canonically in this timeline, he has awoken his quirk nearly a year before he joins UA and would have specific kind of specifications for what his quirk and his suit should kind of help him to do. That said, I personally can't think of too many things that this timeline's Deku would really need in his costume. Nanites allows him to build his machines over his clothes like Rex does in his canon series, and it's possible to just let him wear something completely normal that just makes him look cool, kind of like how Jiro and Kaminari do. So in that vein, you actually could give him a costume that looks like Generator Rex's costume. For now, I'm not going to do that, though I do have one idea for a costume he could have in this timeline. I'm just not going to introduce it just yet. He might have to get his current costume destroyed before he has this new idea I'm having, so just wait on it. Now, as for Class 1A's indoor anti-personnel battle training, the parameters of the fight are still the same. Nuclear weapon, time limit, capture the villains or secure the weapons for the heroes to win, capture the heroes or wait out the time limit for the villains to win. And that said, teams are still drawn by lots, but since this is canonically a randomized event in a different timeline, it makes sense to have different teams than in canon. For those of you who haven't seen my What If Jiraiya Adopted Naruto series, this will be the first time you'll see me introducing this idea. With multiverse theory, say if you were to flip a coin and got heads, there's technically supposed to be a different universe where you instead got tails. My idea with this is, in a different universe, it should not come up the exact same events, meaning you get different matchups for teams and matchups in fights. So, to determine these randomized teams, since there are 20 students in Class 1A, I simply use a D20 and the Class 1A seeding chart, which should be on screen right now. This is how I got teams A through H. And then I used a random matchup generator to decide which of these teams will be going up against each other. And then I flipped a coin to see who will be the heroes and who will be the villains. Heads for heroes, tails for villains. Now, to save time on narration, I'm just going to have these listed on screen for a good while so you guys can get a good look at exactly who is the heroes and who is the villains and who's on what team. Blue letters are heroes and red are villains. Also, quick disclaimer, I'm not sure how some people don't realize this, but when I say I randomize a battle in a What If, I actually do mean it and I'm not lying about it. These actually are the randomized results that I came up with. I simply do the randomized matchups before I actually finish the script. I've gotten a few comments that argue if the fights are randomized, how did I come up with a choreographed and planned fight, and it's crazy I have to actually explain this, but I just write the events of the randomized matchup after I randomize it. Anyway, with match 1, Team B faces off against Team H. There really isn't much to say here. I feel like Aoyama and Sero have such different personalities, it'd be hard for them to plan anything, while Ida and Midoriya will likely be on the same page from the start of this. Basically, they just set up Ida to protect the weapon while Deku patrols the building, kind of like they do in canon. Naval Laser could possibly destroy Deku's builds because it's shown to destroy the robots during the entrance exams, and Sero's tape could be a problem as well, but Deku has studied his classmates' powers through the entrance exams and the assessment tests, so I don't see him getting beaten by those two techniques too easily. Beyond that, Aoyama does have a very small limit right now, and let's say that Sero tries to kind of tape Deku down or maybe use his, smash hands against him and kind of tape him to a surface so they can keep moving by. Deku could probably just rip his smash hand apart from the ground and just kind of pull the ground up with it. So Sero's in a really bad position with Deku. It's just a really poor matchup at this point in their development as heroes. So I think that Deku picks apart his opponents really, really easily and ends up capturing them. In match 2, Team D takes on Team C, and I easily give this one to Team D. Koda is so shy at this point in the timeline that Kaminari's personality will likely be a bit off-putting to him and causing him to be a pretty poor partner to plan with. Not to mention they have to protect the weapon instead of actually going to get it. And Koda probably couldn't be too effective in this scenario because he won't be able to call them birds. He might be able to call them bugs, but that's about it. Kaminari also has a very poor limit to his quirk at this point, meaning he can't fight forever. On the other hand, Kendo is a really dangerous close-range fighter who doesn't have a poor stamina issue. And using Shoji's powers, they can probably locate where the other team is really easily and find them really quickly. So now this puts Kaminari in a position where he can't really use his attacks because if he does, he might hurt Koda or might even set off their weapon, so it's pretty much checkmate at this point. I do, however, acknowledge that Koda is canonically very physically strong, so maybe if he decided to fight, it could help a tiny bit, but even then, you're still up against two very good, strong physical fighters, so it might kind of cancel itself out. I really do give it to Team D, but maybe with an asterisk. In match 3, Team E goes against Team G. I think Team G easily takes this fight in most scenarios, but Tokiyami is very smart, and I can see him knowing Todoroki is the biggest threat here, not just in this test, but pretty much at school right now, and planning around him with Higakure, though I don't see this being easy for them at all. Honestly, Todoroki could end this fight in an instant and be done with it, and I do acknowledge that idea. But I do want to go over the one scenario I came up with where I think that Tokoyami and Hagakure can actually pull the win out. Todoroki would start off the fight as he does in canon with trying to freeze the floor, but Dark Shadow is there to help Tokoyami escape. During this attack, he thinks that he might have been able to hit Hagakure as well, and Todoroki actually hears her scream out as if her feet have been frozen to the floor, so he basically just focuses on Tokoyami, thinking that Hagakure is no longer an issue. With that done, Tokoyami has Dark Shadow rush Ojiro, who jumps out of the way. He's then tackled by something invisible, and it's revealed that Hagakure had actually been riding on Dark Shadow. She's then able to capture Ojiro, who is caught off guard and flustered by the fact that he's basically just had a naked girl on top of him. Tokoyami explains that from the beginning, they knew that Todoroki would have some type of wide-reaching move that would end this extremely fast, or he would not have been admitted to the school on recommendation. This is why he had his idea to have Hagakure ride on Dark Shadow, just so they had an insurance card in case he did have a move like that. That way, she could be present in the room, and her voice could be heard to make the illusion of her being on the ground and not riding on Dark Shadow the entire time. It was a really clever decoy. Todoroki realizes the bit of a pickle he's in, but before either of the two can try and get close to him, he forces them back with a wall of ice and tries to freeze the weapon to capture it. This could actually work, as there isn't much Team E can do about this, so either All Might use the intercom to say that Team G wins here. He tells Todoroki that that doesn't count as capturing the weapon, in which case I think Team E can have a tough time pulling off the win here, or Tokoyami himself, Hagakure, and Dark Shadow try to overwhelm Todoroki with a 3-man assault, which actually could be pretty effective in this situation. If this were to happen, I think that Team E does pull out the win, but I am 100% aware that Team G deserves it in most situations. So I'm going to give it to Team E because I think they just deserve it, but Team G as well has a really good chance of winning. Remember, my scenarios are not the end-all be-all, and disagreements and individual opinions are fine and are going to pop up no matter what. I'm just saying that for my scenario, Team E pulls out this win. Match 4 kicks off with Team I and Team J clashing. I think all members of these teams can mesh really well together and come up with some really good plans. Kirishima is the most tactical guy, but Asui is a really smart person and could maybe try and think up some good strategies for them. But with Ochako and Rikido on a team together, I think there is a really good plan they could use. Using Sato's strength to bust up rubble from the ground and Uraraka's powers to make it weightless, the two teammates can make a supposed wall or barrier of rubble around the weapon. Then all they have to do is give it back its weight, so it's a lot harder to get through. And now they have a second degree of defense. Now that said, for this plan, Sato would have used up a good amount of his stamina for it, and the sounds of kind of busting up the rubble and moving it around would have alerted Kirishima and Tsuyu to where they are, and Tsuyu and Kirishima are already fresh and haven't really used their powers too much. So if Sato conks out in the middle of the fight, he leaves Uraraka alone, and in a 2-on-1 fight against Kirishima and Tsuyu, that's a really bad thing. Now, even beyond that, I think that Tsu could just speed blitz them while Kirishima handles the fighting. Now, even if he's made weightless, I think that Tsu would plan around this and kind of expect this. He could just use Kirishima as a weightless wrecking ball while he's hardened to do a lot of damage to the other team. So I'm going to give this to Team J pretty easily, though again, both teams have a really good matchup and a really good ability to kind of plan around each other and make some really good combo moves up, so you can really give this either way. The final match has Team F and Team A face off. Like with the first match, I can see this being a pretty open and shut case. Jiro is the only member of Team F with an extremely long range attack, but it could backfire in such a small and enclosed space. Meanwhile, Ashido's moves are a bit too lethal for this type of maneuver. Remember how Bakugo almost got disqualified for using his big gauntlet attack? She could also get disqualified for kind of melting one of her opponents. Now that said, I can actually see the two of them coming up with a really good, decent plan, because Jiro is pretty intelligent and Ashido is really creative, so these two could really come up with something good. Meanwhile, I see Bakugo, like in canon, being a very hard teammate to come up with a plan with. Momo is so logical yet somewhat soft-spoken that I could see her shying away from him and just accepting his plan to just rush in and attack by himself. That said, in this timeline, I see two factors coming into play during this situation. Being around Deku may possibly, just maybe, calm Bakugo down a tiny eeny-beeny bit, and that and his being seen with Izuku, Uraraka, and Tenya at the last 2 days of school at lunch may make him seem a bit more approachable. If all else fails, I could maybe see Momo approaching Deku, who is friends with Bakugo on this timeline, so to speak, or maybe Deku approaching her and just getting some advice about how to deal with Bakugo and how to come up with a plan with him. If this were to happen, Izuku could possibly broker some type of plan that both team members agree to by wording it in a way that he knows Bakugo will like. What if they could win without throwing a single attack? Though it's a bit too passive for his taste, Bakugo likes the idea of being so far above his opponents, he never even has to throw a punch. It's like he's only using 1% of his power or something. Seeing that he likes the idea, Deku has Bakugo produce one of his flashbang grenades for Momo to study and learn how to reproduce it. But because he does this, I think Deku would feel a need to go over and give Ashido and Jiro some help with their plan as well, just to be fair without spoiling the other team's plan. What he tells them, I'm not so sure. Their powers aren't great for this situation, and they're still very new to hero training, and they don't really mesh too well. So there's not too many ideas that I can come up with, but Deku is probably a better tactician than me, so I'm sure he could do something in the actual situation. When the match starts, Momo and Katsuki quickly find their opponents and throw out a large amount of the grenades into the room, which they just aren't prepared for. They're stunned by the flashbangs, and Bakugo rushes into the room and captures the weapon. I think this would be the fastest match of the day, in fact. Later, everyone kind of introduces themselves a bit more, and they get to know each other a bit before they all go home. With no one being hurt and the battle training being mostly lighthearted, as well as Deku introducing himself to Ashido earlier, I can maybe see her suggesting the class go out and do something as a group after school. She is one of the most outgoing and friendly people in the class, and with her now having a relationship with Deku in some type of friendship, and Deku already having a pretty good friend group himself, it will make sense for them to kind of be more interactive with each other a lot earlier in the timeline than they are in canon. The more outgoing and friendly people in the class, like Ochako, would definitely go to this, and I introduced this idea now because I just think it is a chance for organic fallout from this situation that results more in development of characters and relationships rather than power growth. A few days later, reporters would still swarm the school since All Might is teaching there, and during this time, Deku may go and seek some more guidance from Power Loader. Maybe a way to make his builds non-stick or more reinforced from really high impact lasers or something. This wouldn't result in too much, just more engineering knowledge for Deku and a deepened relationship with Power Loader and Hatsune. Aizawa still gives everyone some helpful feedback from the battle training, and the class president has to be picked. Here, I can really see a huge change happening. With so many people being influenced by Deku in this first few weeks of class, I can see him getting way more than 3 votes for this timeline. Momo may also vote for him, as well as Ida, and likely Ochako, and maybe even Ashido. Deku is a bit more confident in this timeline, but not by any extreme amount. At lunch that day, I can see a very similar conversation to what happened in canon taking place, but there's a lot more people there. Bakugo, Ashido, Yaoyorozu, and probably a lot of others tip of the group too. If this were to happen, I could see Deku receiving a lot more encouragement to pursue being the class president, and maybe even one threat not to quit from Bakugo. And this likely will influence him some. The big panic in the halls will still happen, and Ida still calms everyone down. Later on, Deku stands in front of the class and asks Aizawa if it would be possible to have 2 vice presidents. It is illogical, but I don't see him objecting to this. With that, Deku elects Tenya Ida to be one of his vice presidents along with Momo Yaoyorozu and help Deku to lead the class. Later on a Wednesday, Habit Headgear attacks the city, but in this timeline, he doesn't get too far. Mount Lady is shown to be pretty beat up in this fight in the manga, and I don't think that this happens here. All Might just arrives and Midoriya smashes him way faster than he does in canon, since his speed hasn't really dropped at all since he still has One for All at this time. That said, I do think he's going to be running a bit late for now. Stopping to deal with Headgear is still a delay nonetheless. Meanwhile, Class 1A still travels to the USJ for rescue training, and Deku is able to wear his costume like everyone else since it isn't destroyed. The class would then meet with 13, and he gives his entire explanation of what today's training is supposed to be. Unfortunately, something unexpected happens and interrupts his training. Villains begin flooding into the USJ, and Eraserhead orders 13 to evacuate the students out of the facility as he rushes into the fray to take on the small fry villains. The entire situation with Kurogiri would likely still happen as it does in canon, with Deku still being a bit overwhelmed by this whole situation and everything going on with it. Though it's possible to also randomize the individual zones the students are sent to and which students are sent there, I think it'd be a bit too hard to do so, and as such, I'll be leaving them the same as canon's places and replacing Mineta with Kendo, but I do acknowledge the possibility of this being a randomized event as well. Deku is dropped into the flood zone where Tsuyu saves him from being chowed on by a villain and gets him and Kendo onto the ship to regroup. This conversation goes a lot like the one in canon, with everyone detailing their quirks and what they'd actually do. Deku racks his brain for a way out of this. He had been working on a new way of using a movement build other than the Skull Stompers, but even if they did jump super far, he's not sure if they'll clear the water, and he's not even sure if the villains will leave them alone if they do get out of the water. No, they have to deal with the villains first and then escape. The boat is then about to sink, and Deku gulps and looks to Tsuyu. He thinks he has one way of taking out the villains in one fell swoop, but he is not 100% sure if it'll work. His classmate tells him she'll cover him if things go south, making Deku a lot more confident. Summoning up a Smash Hand, he makes it much larger than he usually would, almost twice the normal size and extremely hard to lift. He'd been thinking about some of the possible modifications that Power Loader and he had been talking about over the last few days, and some of the nature of water, and with that, he dives in. Hitting the water Smash Hand first, he cheers as the new modification to his oldest build actually works, and the mechanical fist of the Smash Hand begins to spin at high RPMs, making the water swirl around it. This causes him to drive down to the bottom of the pool very quickly and create a whirlpool, sucking the villains into it. The spinning force actually is a bit too much for him to manage, and the spinning fist actually drills a large hole in the bottom of the pool, making the water spaghetti drain out and pull the villains into it. Deku finally releases the build and allows it to crumble as he tries his hardest for another build so soon after he just released a very large one, though he gets lucky. A tiny, incomplete Skull Stomper is his only reward, but he uses it to jump through the bottom of the pool and out of the center of the whirlpool, making the water churn and explode as two different very powerful forces push and pull the water with the villain still inside of it. The rough force is actually enough to knock all of them out in one fell swoop, and Deku jumps out of the water. In an instant, Sue catches Deku mid-air, and with him and Kendo, she leaps away from the boat as he tries to regain some stamina. Aside from this, everything happening away from Deku and his crew is happening pretty similar to canon, but Bakugo and Kirishima defeat their villains way faster. Bakugo had Deku as a training partner for 10 months, so his battle prowess is higher than it was at this point in the story in canon. Again, stuff starts going down as it did in canon. Meaning Ida goes for help after 13 is taken down, Nomu attacks and beats down Eraserhead, but saves Sue just where he's knocked out, and in this timeline, both Kendo and Deku try to knock Shigaraki away from her. While Nomu is able to get in front of both giant punches, the power of Deku's is a bit more than anyone expected. The resulting shockwave from the blow is enough to push Sue and Kendo away and further into the water, while Shigaraki expertly flips away. Unfazed by this, Nomu tries to grab onto Deku's giant metal arm, but smartly, Deku activates the spinning fist mode of the Smash Hand, causing the monster to be flung away like a bullet. During this, All Might had already arrived and stepped in to save Aizawa, but Deku's strength surprises everyone, causing him to stop for a moment to watch what happens. Shigaraki shows some amazing speed and rushes Deku after he flings Nomu away, but Deku finds himself in a pretty dangerous situation, with All Might actually stepping in once again to stop it. Before Shigaraki can be hit full on, Nomu intercepts him, healing from his already small injuries, and the two begin their brawl like in canon. Deku and Kendo easily get Eraserhead out of harm's way, make it to the other students, just as All Might is going for the suplex due to Shigaraki's taunts. Kurogiri still interferes, and when Deku sees this moment, he feels a deep desire to save All Might that pushes him to break a limit. As lopsided as it may look, he is able to create two different builds at the same time and maintain them at a pretty good quality. The Skull Stomper is on his left foot, while a Smash Hand is on his right hand. With a jump that breaks the ground from the force of it, Deku rockets towards All Might and Nomu to save All Might. Kurogiri still appears in front of him, but Bakugo's faster arrival allows him to shut this down and open the path for Deku to save All Might. Once he reaches them, Deku grabs onto Nomu's foot as he rushes by, and the monster is dragged out of Kurogiri's portal and pulled away by Deku at high speed that allows him to free All Might. Deku then flings Nomu as hard as he can with the Smash Hand towards an adjacent wall, but he's unprepared as the beast corrects his flight and doubles his movement speed by jumping off the wall with a loud boom. His arm outstretches for a high-speed clothesline, and Deku only has a fraction of a second to think. Though the only real thought that really goes through his head is, "This is going to be my death," before he covers himself with his Smash Hand. As the two collide, Nomu easily breaks through the reinforced metal and ends up flinging Deku right back the way he came, his blocking and his durability of his quirk the only thing that afforded him to not be cut in half by this clothesline. Midoriya's body bounces and skids off the ground like a rag doll before finally coming to a stop by smashing into the steps that lead to the exit of USJ, where all the class waits. The class president had just saved the #1 hero, but at the cost of his own life. Seeing this, Bakugo doesn't even wait and makes good on the threat he made to Kurogiri in canon, and begins unleashing onslaught of powerful explosions to take the villain down, all while yelling in anguish. Pushed into a speed he wasn't aware he could reach anymore through pure rage, All Might lets go of any sadness, pain, or fatigue he felt as he led one student down, and seeing that one was about to cross a line he could not come back from. He rushes forward and grabs Bakugo by his collar and flings him back to get him away from Kurogiri, who is by no means getting up anytime soon. He then bulldozes into Nomu and begins wailing down on him big time. If it was absorption and not nullification, then he'd just overload the creature, and better yet, attacking it would allow him to express some of the deep-seated rage he currently felt at losing a student. Using Nomu's rubbery body as a wedge and his fists as unforgiving sledgehammers, All Might digs a huge crater in the ground as he pummels Nomu over and over and over and over again for the death of a young, promising hero. When he's done, the creature is left flattened and smoking, a mess that tries to heal itself unsuccessfully, as All Might roars in pure, unadulterated rage. Knowing his job is not done yet, he collects himself and jumps out of the crater as he tries to find the other villain with the hand on his face and the Warp Gate villain, but both are gone. The other UA teachers arrive and begin to tend to the injured and arrest the easily defeated low-level villains. All Might feels his limit approaching and decides he needs to leave for now, even though it pains him to do so. The entirety of Class 1A seem to be trying to get to Deku to see if he's okay, but the other teachers won't let them get to him. All Might approaches and asks what his condition is, and with a heavy heart, Snipe explains that Deku's quirk is keeping him alive at the moment since it heals him, but he doesn't look so good. In this state, even Recovery Girl cannot save him. All Might hangs his head at those words as they echo through it. His quirk is healing him, but it isn't strong enough. That's it. He has everyone clear the way as he picks him up. Snipe tries to ask him where he's going, and All Might just says to Recovery Girl. Pushing his limits once again, he summons as much speed as possible as he makes it to UA and rushes into the infirmary in record time. He is just barely able to hold Deku bridal style as he reverts to his true form. The old lady examines Deku and, like Snipe, decides she can't help him. All Might agrees with this idea, but says that together they can definitely save the boy. Recovery Girl realizes what he means and tells him to give her his arm. Making sure he is 100% willing to give it up, she sets about taking a sample of his blood and decides there's no time to check if they have similar blood types. The DNA is all that matters. Pushing the syringe into Izuku's veins, One for All is passed onto him and it begins supercharging his own quirk, making his body and his nanites stronger and allowing them to begin quickly healing the damage already done to him. Playing it safe, Recovery Girl uses her quirk and speeds this up even more. She then gets another reading of the student's vitals and sighs in relief. Looking to the tired and beaten All Might, she announces that Izuku Midoriya will live, and now All Might must raise his new successor. And that plus Ultra fans will be leaving the timeline off for now. So I know a ton of things haven't changed from canon just yet. Trust me, the larger changes will soon take place after this. This vid's already kind of long, so please be sure to hit the like button on this video. A ton of you were asking for a new part to this series, but not showing that you wanted it by liking or sharing the last part to it. There's a reason I favor my other My Hero Academia story over this one. Also, be sure to subscribe with notifications on. About 50% of you guys are not doing so yet. Make sure you follow me on Twitter for tons of sneak peeks and exclusives, and join the Discord server to interact with me and my community. Both are linked in the description below. Shoutouts go to my very loyal patrons. In the Hero tier we have Lone Quaid, Zyra Returns, and Treb. In Shinobi tier we have Pizza15X, and in the Z-Warrior tier we have Shannon Roberts. In the Beyond tier we have Knuckles OX, Don, and Robert Smith. And in the Plus Ultra tier, DJ the Lazy Gamer. You guys do a lot to support the channel directly while YouTube gears up to make a ton of harmful changes, and it really means a lot and helps a ton. Please consider joining their ranks by supporting Plus Ultraman on Patreon. Nothing left to say after that, but take care of yourselves and always go beyond Plus Ultra. See you guys next time.